there was a lot of talk during the panel about needing to be, I guess, more aggressive or confrontational with China. But as you mentioned, China is a huge trading partner for Iowa, and former Governor Terry Branstad developed really close ties with President Xi. I guess, is there a concern about potential blowback and what that could mean for Iowa's agricultural exports and what that would mean for Iowa's ag economy?
Well, I would say that there is always risk with any changes to existing agreements with China, but we as Americans should be taking that prudent risk. I think it's extremely important that we evaluate what is our standing with many of the trade agreements we have. And during the Trump administration, you saw some significant pushback from President Trump against President Xi when it came to ag exports. And I actually had an Iowa farmer that put it best. I mean, he slammed his hand on the table and he said, it may hurt us a little bit now what President Trump is doing, but by golly, he was very glad that President Trump stood up for the Iowa farmer, because the Chinese always take advantage of the contracts that are given. They will cancel them while our soybeans and corn is heading off over across the Pacific. And what choice does the Iowa farmer have but to renegotiate at a lower cost for the Chinese? So Iowans are fed up with the way the Chinese treat our farmers. And we were glad to see some changes in the last administration. We wish that President Biden would stand up a little more for our Iowa farmers.
I agree with all of that. I just would add, from the Wisconsin perspective, as we seek to selectively decouple from China, and I do think we need to, if for no other reason than to reduce the leverage, the coercive leverage they have over us, there's obviously a line, and I don't have any problem with Wisconsin or Iowan farmers selling soybeans to China, nor do I have a problem with Americans buying cheap textiles from China as long as it's not made with slave labor, right? We don't want to be abetting a genocide in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. The other thing I'd say is, as that selective decoupling proceeds, we need to have a proactive agenda to open new markets for Wisconsin farmers, for Iowa farmers. My working hypothesis is that you cannot selectively decouple without simultaneously enhancing your economic and technological partnerships within the free world. So things like exploring a free trade agreement post-Brexit with the UK or Taiwan, having a digital regional trade agreement. We can get really creative with a proactive agenda. At the same time, we seek to defend ourselves from growing CCP economic aggression.
Yeah.
So the question was, it was mentioned that China is a big trading partner for Iowa, and former Governor Branstad developed close ties with Chinese President Xi. I guess, is there concern about blowback and the impacts that can have to Iowa's farm economy by taking a more direct, aggressive stance against China?
Well, I think it is about balance, right? It's about making sure, and this is what Mike said, making sure we're enhancing trade agreements with partners in the Indo-Pacific. We can't have all of our eggs in one basket, and yes, our economies are intertwined, but we have to be real about the situation that we're in. The status quo is too dangerous to leave in place when it comes to the Chinese Communist Party. So I think it's twofold. It's enhancing our relationships around the world while still upping our rhetoric with the Chinese, making sure they understand the parameters that we're operating under in. They're not going to get a free pass anymore like we've been giving them under the World Trade Organization for the past 20 plus years. And it comes down again to accountability. They can't play these games with us. They're not going to get away with it, and that's the rhetoric we need on the global stage, and that's what I would call on the Biden administration to do.